Agnes Bishop was the first person from Calder parish to be accused of witchcraft. She was probably singled out because she was an older woman who had had a bit of a reputation for arguing with her neighbours. Agnes married David Jack in 1609 and they lived at Dedridge, which is now an area of Livingston. In 1618, Agnes was called in front of the Calder Kirk session because of an argument with her neighbour, James Aikman. Agnes was found in the wrong and ordered to pay 10 Scots pounds to the Poor Fund, about £90 now. 26 years later, on the 20th of December 1643, Agnes appeared before Linlithgow Presbytery. She was accused by Hugh Kennedy, minister at Calder, of being a common charmer and a witch. By the 31st of January 1644, she had been declared guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to death. Agnes was held at the toll booth at Linlithgow before being moved back to Calder to await her execution. The only sentence possible for a witch was death. At Calder, this happened at Cunninger Hill, where the women would be dressed in sackcloth, tied to a stake, strangled, and their body burned.
Helen was executed as a witch at Calder in 1644. Her story links the women accused at Calder with those from the neighbouring Carnwath parish. In the summer of 1644, Hugh Kennedy wrote to James Douglas, minister at Carnwath, to say that Helen had confessed to being a witch. She had apparently named Catherine Shaw from Carnwath as a witch too. The letter was used by Douglas to accuse Catherine and 3 other Carnwath women, Margaret Reid, Margaret Watson and Jean Lachlan, of being witches. The women later confessed and were found guilty. Their confessions tell of witches' meetings at Levenseat and Tormywheel, hills on the border of Carnwath and Calder parishes. Margaret Watson's confession said that she flew to these witches' meetings on a bundle of straw. And the others she named also flew. Maily Patterson on a cat, Jonet Lockie on a cockerel, her aunt, also Margaret Watson, on a thorn tree, and Jean Lachlan on an elder tree. At Calder, the minister is known to have used sleep deprivation and beatings to extort confessions. These confessions would have been given after similar torture. Despite forced confessions being the only evidence against them, Catherine Shaw, Margaret Reid, Margaret Watson and Jean Lachlan were all found guilty and executed. In January 1645, James Douglas attended the execution of Margaret Watson and Jean Lachlan, and he reported to Lanark Presbytery that they had died denying that they were witches. They also said that others they had been forced to name were innocent too. This probably saved Maily Patterson, Jonet Lockie and Aunt Margaret Watson's lives.
In 1644, Jonet was accused of witchcraft by the Calder Kirk session, and incredibly, she had to pay for her own imprisonment, trial and execution. Jonet lived at Nether Williamson with her husband David Aikman, and they had only been married for 2 years when, on the 18th of July 1644, David was forced to sign over 100 merks for his and Jonet's debts and possession of the Calder Kirk session. This was about £700 in today's money. The Kirk session went to great trouble to collect the money owed to David and Jonet. They even sent a debt collector to knock on the door of Christian Taylor, a widow from Crofthead, not far from Jonet's home near Nether Williamson. The debt collector took money and lengths of cloth from Christian. The money and goods were given to Sir William Sandlings, tutor of Torfichan, who was David's landlord and Calder Kirk elder, and tutor then used the money to pay the cost of Jonet's imprisonment and trial. Any left over was used to pay the remaining witches who couldn't afford for themselves. The record shows he paid John Cranston 56 Scot pounds, 5 shillings and 4 pence, worth about £500 now, for meat and drink that he supplied for the women. Treating Jonet and her family that way seems shocking now, and it did upset people at the time, especially Isabel Ewart, wife of local laird, who complained to the Kirk had killed honest, innocent women who were making money from the witch hunt.
Margaret was a woman accused of witchcraft who, in spite of suffering terribly, refused to confess and was eventually freed. Margaret was first accused of witchcraft in South Leith parish in January 1644, but she escaped. Unfortunately, she was quickly recaptured at Calder, apprehended by James Sandilands, the Kirk Baillie, and kept prisoner in the vestry of the Kirk of Calder. For 4 months, Margaret was treated cruelly. Kept naked except for a sackcloth, she must have been very cold. She was also tortured and beaten. She was forced to stand on a stool for 26 days, while men kept her constantly awake. Whenever she fell over, James Sandiland and Hugh Kennedy, the young minister, struck her to make her stand back up again. Margaret's head bled heavily and one of her feet was broken, and she described being in peril of her life, in her own words, dinged out her brains. She was not allowed to see anyone, not even her husband, Archibald Gray of Caldermuir, or their children. If Margaret had confessed to being a witch, she would have been found guilty and sentenced to death. She must have been a very remarkable woman to withstand all this without confessing. We know her story because it is recorded in an appeal Margaret made to the Privy Council in Edinburgh. She told their lordships about her cruel treatment and said that she was being held without hope of release or trial. She asked to be set free. The Privy Council agreed and ordered her to be released on surety, which means bail of 500 merks, or £3,500 in our money.
In September 1644, Isabel Ewart appeared before the Kirk session accused of scolding and railing against them. She had dared to speak out about the witch hunt. Isabel was a wealthy noblewoman and was married to the Laird of Pumferston. They lived at Pumferston Castle and had 7 children. On the 22nd of September 1644, Isabel appeared before the Kirk session. The session made serious accusations against her. That she had complained that the Kirk session was making money from the witch hunt, that she told people that the Kirk was spreading rumours that she was a moyener, or a go-between for the women who had been accused as witches. Isabel denied the charges but did say that the minister had done things behind people's backs that he dare not say to their face. Her case was escalated to Linlithgow Presbytery, and in December 1644, her husband the Laird was there to defend her. At this hearing, Isabel was accused of telling people that the Kirk session was torturing witches and beating them with rungs to try to extort confessions, branding honest women with witchcraft, putting innocent women to death, and taking in money from the witches. This was incredibly brave of Isabel. By speaking out, she risked being punished with humiliation in a sackcloth in front of the congregation, or being chained in the stocks that were attached to a large plane tree in the centre of Calder village. There's no further record of what happened to Isabel, but we do know that she gave birth to her sixth daughter Jean in May 1645, and that Isabel and the laird were both still alive in November 1672.
They tried to attack your spirit hen, destroy that which they couldn't control. So you spoke, and the world didn't listen hen, smoothed the smedum that burned in your soul. Your deed, but never gone hen. There's them that still carry your name. There's them that mind criminals biding in courts, heeds that should hang heavy with shame. Old Nick didn't ken ye for Eve hen, you had but your ain eyes to see. The wrang was nae yours, the guilt was misplaced, your innocence plain as can be. But they took muckle mair than a life hen, a Connell snuffed out in its prime. A state-sanctioned murder of innocent folks, punishment lacking a crime. Your soul's now at peace with the earth hen, sleep and be one with the sky. We'll screeve your name in books they cannae burn, write a legacy never to die. But we will nae just beg of your pardon hen, those days have long ceased to exist. We now demand justice for all those like you, long gone, but eternally missed.